In 1980, a band released an album that would sell 50 million copies worldwide. 50 million? That's more than the entire population of South Korea buying one album. But here's what nobody talks about. Just 6 months earlier, their lead singer was found dead in a car, frozen to death after a night of heavy drinking. Most bands would have ended right there. Instead, they created the second best-selling album in music history. This is the story of how two Scottish brothers who emigrated to Australia created the loudest, raunchiest, most unstoppable force in rock and roll. This is AC/DC. Sydney, Australia. November 1973. While the rest of the world was dancing to disco and listening to soft rock, something dangerous was brewing in a small rehearsal room in the suburbs. Two brothers, Malcolm and Angus Young, were about to unleash a sound that would make parents cover their children's ears for the next 5 decades. The Young family story starts in Glasgow, Scotland. William and Margaret Young had 8 children, and in 1963 they made a decision that would change rock history. They emigrated to Australia. Malcolm was 10 years old, Angus was just 8. Their older brother George had already found success with the Easy Beat, scoring a worldwide hit with Friday on My Mind. But Malcolm and Angus, they were different. While George played pop music that made teenage girls swoon, his younger brothers were obsessed with something darker, louder, more primal. Malcolm picked up his first guitar at 15. He didn't want to learn scales or theory. He wanted to make noise. Raw, powerful noise. Angus was even worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. At 14 years old, he'd come home from school, throw off his uniform, pick up his Gibson SG, and play until his fingers bled. Wait, did I say throw off his uniform? Actually, that's not quite right. Because one day, his sister Margaret suggested something that would become rock's most iconic image. "Why don't you just wear your school uniform on stage?" she said. Angus thought she was joking. She wasn't. In late 1973, Malcolm had just left a band called the Velvet Underground. No, not that Velvet Underground. An Australian cover band with the same name. He was 20 years old and tired of playing other people's songs. He wanted to create something new, something that would grab audiences by the throat and never let go. So he called his little brother. "Angus," he said, "let's start a band." Their first rehearsal was in their sister Margaret's living room. The neighbors complained within 10 minutes. They would keep complaining for the next 2 years. But finding the right members, that was like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Their first singer, Dave Evans, had the look but not the attitude. He wanted to wear glitter and satin. Glitter and satin. Can you imagine AC/DC in glitter? Malcolm and Angus wanted denim, leather, and sweat. The drummer kept changing. First Larry Van Crite, then Colin Burgess, then Russell Coleman. It was like a revolving door of rhythm sections. But then, in September 1974, everything changed. The band was playing at the Hampton Court Hotel in Sydney when their driver mentioned something. "You guys need a real singer," he said. "There's this guy named Bon Scott, used to sing for a band called Fraternity." Bon Scott was 31 years old, ancient by rock standards in 1974. He'd already been pronounced dead once after a motorcycle accident, spending 3 days in a coma. He had tattoos when tattoos meant something dangerous. He'd been in reform school, he'd been in jail, and his voice sounded like he'd been gargling whiskey and broken glass since birth. The first time Bon saw AC/DC perform, he thought they were terrible. They were so loud and raw, he later said. But there was something there, something special. When Malcolm and Angus met Bon, they weren't impressed either. This guy was 9 years older than Malcolm, wearing platform shoes and talking about his old band. But then he got behind the microphone. What came out wasn't singing in any traditional sense. It was a howl, a scream, a battle cry. This was it. This was the missing piece. With Bon Scott as frontman, AC/DC suddenly made sense. But Australia in 1974 wasn't ready for them. Club owners would book them once, then ban them. Too loud, they'd say, too crude, too violent. One club owner actually measured the volume and said they were louder than a jet engine. So they did what any self-respecting rock band would do, they got louder. George Young, the older brother, became their producer. He understood what they were trying to do. Don't smooth out the rough edges, make them rougher. Their first single, "Can I Sit Next to You Girl," had actually been recorded with Dave Evans. When they re-recorded it with Bon, it was like comparing a house cat to a tiger. But it was their second single that announced AC/DC to Australia. "Baby Please Don't Go" hit the charts in February 1975. Their first album, High Voltage, was released in February 1975. It sold 170,000 copies in Australia alone. For a country of 13 million people, that was huge. But here's where the story gets complicated. The album that Americans know as High Voltage isn't the same album. When Atlantic Records picked them up for international distribution, they created a compilation from their first 2 Australian albums. It was confusing as hell, and it would take years for fans to sort out which songs were on which version. But none of that mattered when AC/DC hit the stage. Angus had perfected his schoolboy persona, complete with his sister's original suggestion of the uniform. But it wasn't just a gimmick. During guitar solos, he would literally convulse on stage, his whole body shaking like he was being electrocuted. He'd fall to the ground, legs still kicking, never missing a note. He'd climb on Bond's shoulders in solo while being carried through the crowd. One night in Melbourne, he kept playing even when his amp caught fire.
1976? The band had conquered Australia, but the rest of the world didn't know they existed. When they tried to book their first UK tour, promoters literally laughed. "Who the hell is AC/DC?" one booking agent said. "Sounds like an electrical company." They arrived in London in April 1976 with barely enough money for food. Their first show was at the Red Cow in Hammersmith. 16 people showed up. 16! The band made £45, barely enough to cover their drinks. But word started to spread. By their third week, the venues were packed. The British press didn't know what to make of them. Punk was exploding in London. The Sex Pistols, The Clash, The Damned. But AC/DC wasn't punk. They weren't metal either, not exactly. They were something new, pure, undiluted rock and roll fury. And audiences couldn't get enough.
The record labels in America weren't interested. Atlantic Records executive after executive passed on them. "They're too raw for American radio," one said. "Nobody can understand what the singer is saying," said another. One executive actually said, and this is a direct quote, "They look like plumbers, not rock stars." But there was one believer. Michael Klemfner at Atlantic saw something others didn't. He fought for them, arguing with his bosses for months. "Give them one shot," he said. "One American tour. If they don't connect, I'll drop it." In the summer of 1977, AC/DC landed in America. They were booked as the opening act for bands nobody remembers now. Moxie, UFO, Cheap Trick before they were famous. Their equipment kept breaking down, they were sleeping in the van. Bond got arrested in Jacksonville for allegedly hitting a police officer, charges that were later dropped. But something was happening in the crowds. Kids were showing up just for the opening act, then leaving. In Texas, they caused a riot when the venue oversold tickets. 3,000 kids tried to cram into a space for 1,500. Then came the album that changed everything. Highway to Hell, released July 27, 1979. For the first time, they worked with an outside producer, Robert "Mutt" Lang. The band was nervous. Would Lang try to soften their sound? The opposite happened. Lang understood that AC/DC's power came from their simplicity. Don't add orchestras. Don't add synthesizers. Just make the best goddamn rock record possible. The title track, Highway to Hell, was inspired by the drive from Melbourne to Sydney, a stretch of road called the Canning Highway that had claimed so many lives locals actually called it the Highway to Hell. But Bond's lyrics turned it into something else, a celebration of the rock and roll lifestyle. Living easy, living free, season ticket on a one-way ride. The album hit number 17 in America. They were finally breaking through. The tour was selling out 20,000-seat arenas. They had made it. February 19, 1980. Bon Scott spent the night drinking at the Music Machine nightclub in London. He'd been drinking heavily for weeks. The success was taking its toll. The constant touring, the pressure, the lifestyle. His friend Alistair Kinnear drove him home, but Bon was too drunk to get out of the car, so Kinnear let him sleep it off in the back seat. When he came back the next morning, Bon Scott was dead. The official cause was acute alcohol poisoning and death by misadventure. He had choked on his own vomit and frozen to death. He was 33 years old. The band was devastated. Malcolm and Angus considered breaking up. How could AC/DC continue without Bon? His voice, his presence, his danger. It was irreplaceable. At the funeral, Bon's father pulled them aside. "Bon would want you to continue," he said. "Don't stop now." Finding a new singer seemed impossible. They auditioned dozens of vocalists. None of them had that rawness, that power. Then someone mentioned Brian Johnson. Brian was 32 years old, singing for a band called Geordie in Newcastle. He wasn't famous, he wasn't young, but when he opened his mouth to sing Whole Lotta Rosie, Malcolm and Angus looked at each other. This guy didn't sound like Bon. Nobody could, but he had his own power. His voice was like a rusty chainsaw cutting through steel. Within a week, Brian Johnson was the new lead singer of AC/DC. But would the fans accept him? Would the world accept AC/DC without Bon Scott? They went back into the studio immediately. Bon had left behind some lyrics, some ideas. The band took those fragments and built something monumental. Back in Black was released on July 25, 1980. The album cover was solid black, a tribute to Bon. No band photos, no artwork, just black. But the music inside was anything but funeral. It was a celebration, a resurrection, a middle finger to death itself. The opening bell toll of Hell's Bells announced that AC/DC was back. You Shook Me All Night Long became their biggest hit. The album went to number 4 in America. then #1 in the UK. Then it just kept selling and selling and selling. Nobody could have predicted what happened next. Back in Black didn't just sell well, it became one of the best-selling albums of all time. 25 million copies in America alone, 50 million worldwide. Only Michael Jackson's Thriller has sold more. Think about that for a second. A band that critics called too raw, fronted by a replacement singer after their original vocalist died, created the second best-selling album in history. The tour was even bigger. They were selling out stadiums, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 people. At Castle Donington in 1981, they played to over 80,000 fans. But here's what made AC/DC different from every other rock band. They didn't change. While other bands from the 70s started adding synthesizers and drum machines in the 80s, AC/DC stayed exactly the same. Same sound, same attitude, same middle finger to anyone who didn't like it. Angus still wore the schoolboy outfit, even as he approached 30. The 1980s should have killed AC/DC. Think about what was popular. Duran Duran, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Prince. Music videos were everything, and AC/DC refused to make fancy videos. Their idea of a music video was them playing live. That's it. No story, no special effects, just rock and roll. And it worked. For Those About to Rock hit #1 in 1981. They were firing actual cannons on stage during the title track. 21 cannons to be exact. But behind the scenes, cracks were starting to show. Phil Rudd, their drummer since 1975, was having problems. Drugs, alcohol, personal issues. He was fired in 1983. Malcolm was drinking heavily. The pressure of constant touring, constant recording, it was taking its toll. But they kept going. Album after album, tour after tour. Flick of the switch, fly on the wall, blow up your video. None of them matched Back in Black's success, but they all went gold or platinum. 1990 brought The Razor's Edge in a remarkable comeback. The single Thunderstruck became their biggest hit in a decade. That opening guitar riff, Angus picking the same note over and over, building tension for 30 seconds before the band crashes in. It's one of the most recognizable intros in rock history. The video was quintessential AC/DC. Just them playing live at a club. Real fans, real sweat, real rock and roll. The album went 5 times platinum in America. They were proving something important. In an era of grunge and alternative rock, when bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam were changing everything, AC/DC stayed exactly the same and still sold millions. The Razor's Edge tour was massive, 153 shows, over 3 million tickets sold. In Moscow, they played to over 1 million people at Tushino Airfield. 1 million people, it was one of the largest concerts in history. The 2000s brought challenges nobody saw coming. In 2014, Malcolm Young, the soul of AC/DC, was diagnosed with dementia. The man who created those unstoppable riffs couldn't remember how to play them. He retired from the band he'd founded 41 years earlier. His nephew Stevie Young took his place, but everyone knew it wasn't the same. Then Phil Rudd was arrested in New Zealand on drug charges. Brian Johnson was told by doctors he would lose his hearing completely if he kept touring. Cliff Williams, the bassist since 1977, announced his retirement. By 2016, it looked like AC/DC was finished. Then something unexpected happened. Guns N' Roses singer Axl Rose stepped in to finish the tour when Brian couldn't sing. It was surreal, Axl Rose singing AC/DC songs. But it worked, somehow. It kept them going. November 18, 2017, Malcolm Young died. The driving force behind AC/DC, the rhythm guitarist who created those immortal riffs, was gone. He was 64 years old. Angus called him the founder, the creative force, the one who kept us going. Without Malcolm, could AC/DC even exist? The music world mourned. Every rock musician who ever picked up a guitar owed something to Malcolm Young. His rhythm playing was deceptively simple but impossible to replicate. He never played a solo, never wanted the spotlight, but he was the backbone of every AC/DC song. At his funeral, the Scottish bagpipes played. Then someone hit play on Highway to Hell. It was what Malcolm would have wanted. But the story doesn't end there. In 2020, during a global pandemic, AC/DC released Power Up. Brian Johnson's hearing had improved with new technology. Phil Rudd was back on drums. Cliff Williams came out of retirement. The album was filled with riffs Malcolm had written before his dementia. It debuted at #1 in 21 countries. AC/DC was back. At an age when most rock stars are playing casinos and county fairs, AC/DC was topping the charts. Angus was 65 years old, still wearing the schoolboy uniform, still duck-walking across the stage. The Power Up tour sold out stadiums worldwide. 3 generations of fans, grandparents, parents, and kids, all singing Highway to Hell together. Let's talk about the numbers. AC/DC has sold over 200 million albums worldwide. Back in Black alone has sold 50 million copies. They've had 14 albums go platinum in America. Their songs have been streamed over 15 billion times. But it's not just about sales. AC/DC changed what rock and roll could be. They proved you didn't need to evolve, didn't need to follow trends, didn't need to compromise. Just play loud, play hard, and never apologize. Every hard rock band that came after them owes them a debt. Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Foo Fighters. They all cite AC/DC as an influence. Dave Grohl called them the greatest rock and roll band of all time. Their song Back in Black is played at virtually every sporting event in America. Thunderstruck has become the anthem of victory. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted them in 2003. Angus wore his schoolboy uniform to the ceremony, of course. So what made AC/DC different? Why did they succeed when so many other bands failed? First, they never compromised. In 50 years, they never made a ballad, never used a keyboard, never followed a trend. Second, they understood that rock and roll is about energy, not complexity. Their songs use 3 chords, maybe 4. Angus once said, "People say we've made 11 albums that sound the same. That's not true. We've made 12. Third, they were authentic. These weren't manufactured rock stars. These were working-class guys from Glasgow and Sydney who just wanted to play loud music. Fourth, they created an image that was instantly recognizable. Show anyone a silhouette of a guitarist in a schoolboy uniform, and they know it's Angus Young. And finally, they understood that rock and roll is supposed to be dangerous. Parents were supposed to hate it. That's the whole point." The influence of AC/DC goes far beyond music. It appeared in over 500 movies and TV shows. Iron Man, School of Rock, Supernatural, their music is everywhere. Video games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band introduced new generations to their music. There's an actual street in Melbourne named AC/DC Lane. In Spain, there's a street called Calle de AC/DC. Scientists named a fossil Acrotholus audeti after the band. They said it was thick-skulled, just like their music. There's even a type of jellyfish called Cirro Medusa mediopolis named after them. But the real influence is in the countless kids who picked up guitars because of them. Every garage band playing Back in Black badly but with passion. Every teenager discovering that rock and roll isn't dead. In 2024, a study found that Thunderstruck was the most played song in gyms worldwide. People literally lift weights to AC/DC. Today, as we sit here in 2024, AC/DC is still going. Angus Young is 69 years old, still putting on that schoolboy uniform. They're planning another tour, another album. Bands a third their age have already had reunion tours, but AC/DC never stopped. They've outlived disco, punk, new wave, grunge, new metal, and whatever the hell we're calling music today. They survived the death of Bon Scott. They survived the retirement and death of Malcolm Young. They survived changing musical taste, changing technology, changing everything, and they did it all without changing themselves. AC/DC proves something important about rock and roll, about music, about life itself. If you believe in what you're doing, if you commit completely, if you never compromise, you can outlast anything. They're not just a band anymore. They're a force of nature, a sonic tsunami that's been rolling for 50 years and shows no signs of stopping. Want to hear more incredible stories about legendary bands? Hit that subscribe button right now. We're diving deep into the bands that changed music forever. Next week, we're covering another band that parents hated and kids loved. Can you guess who it is? Drop your guess in the comments below. And if you're a true AC/DC fan, tell us your favorite song in the comments. Is it Highway to Hell, Back in Black, Thunderstruck, or maybe a deep cut that only real fans know? Let us know. And remember, for those about to rock, we salute you. Hit subscribe now.